And let's be real, sometimes staying on track with your goals can feel like an uphill battle, and maybe the things that you've already set out for yourself in January or at the end of last year, you feel like giving up on because it just feels too complicated and it's too much. I mean, of course, you start off motivated and then life happens. You have work stress, you have things going on in your personal life, cravings, the I'll start again on Monday thought patterns starts to pop up. Maybe some of that sounds a little bit familiar to you. Years ago, when I was still trying to understand myself, my habits, my mindset, all of that sort of thing, I fell into the same trap as well, over and over again. And it would always be like some habits would feel easy to sustain and others felt really difficult, and like I was constantly having to pull myself back on track. I would end up in this cycle of making a bit of progress and then self-sabotaging and then feeling like I had to set it all up again. Out of all of the years that I've been training, paying attention to my nutrition, doing self-development, working on my business, the last 2 years were my most consistent years yet. And that's not a fluke, it's not an accident, it's not because I relied on willpower, and not because I was perfect, but because I actually cracked the code of what would help make progress feel easier. I thought I would boil it down into digestible points, and today I'm going to share with you some ways to break that self-sabotage habit and to actually stay on track without that all or nothing mindset and without feeling like you have to rely on motivation just to push through. These are things that I wish I knew sooner, and I know they'll make a difference for you. This is like my Cliff Notes version of it. If you would like a 2-hour workshop on planning, goal setting, organizing, it doesn't matter what time of year you watch it, you can implement all the strategies. I'll leave that linked with a little discount code in the description box for you. Before we jump into it, I wanted to say thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video.
Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or you're managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create beautiful websites, engage with your audience, and sell anything. They have Fluid Engine, which is a next-generation website design system to unlock your creativity. You can start with these incredible website templates and customize every single detail. You can use their built-in analytics and insights to grow your business, set up an online store to sell your products, whether they're physical, digital, or service, and accept appointments on your Squarespace website. But don't just take my word for it. Jump in, start a free trial, see how it feels for you, and when you're ready to hit publish, you can use the URL which I had on the screen or I have down in the description box for a discount off your first purchase.
Now, if you're new here, you don't know me that well, you're not familiar with my content, my name is Rachel Ost. I'm a nutritionist, personal trainer, wellness coach, and mindset coach. I've been coaching people one-on-one for almost 7 years, and I've been in the fitness industry for almost 11 years now. In that time, one of the biggest mistakes to making long-term lasting change that I see people make really regularly is setting outcome-based goals rather than habit-based goals. For example, saying something like, I want to lose 20 kilos of 45 pounds, or I want to squat 100 kilos. These are great goals and they're measurable and they're specific, but sometimes they can feel really distant because they are long-term goals. And this is where process-based goals come in. Let's take one of my clients. I'm going to change her name for this example for her privacy. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah used to set goals that were a little bit arbitrary, like lose weight. And then every time she didn't see immediate progress, she would feel defeated and give up and end up in this cycle of self-sabotage where she would order takeaway foods in the evening and not care too much about what she was doing, and then be like, I'll start it again on Monday and I'll be really strict and I'll be really compliant. When she started with me, one of the first things that we worked on together was shifting her thought patterns from that outcome-based goal to little habit-based goals. So we started with things like, I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk each morning. Then I'm going to drink 1 bottle of water before I start work for the day. Then when I cook dinner, I'm going to make 1 extra portion so I have lunch for tomorrow. Just little habits, little things that are doable and still easy to track. Not only did these feel more achievable, but they led to significant weight loss over time. She was never perfect. It wasn't just like tracking every calorie, every macro, never deviating from the plan. Her journey wasn't like that. We really focused on changing those daily habits, and she was able to make huge changes with her body composition from that. Process goals keep you focused on the habits that you can control, and that's going to build momentum and consistency, and it's also going to give you the opportunity to explore and see what are the habits that you really like. Like, what do you actually want as part of your day? How do you want your lifestyle to feel? Because if you're following a workout program or following a diet because someone said it for you or you found it online but you don't enjoy it, how are you going to do that for years, let alone months? Now, it will be really helpful if we can do a little bit of self-reflection and we can start to analyze what is the primary reason that you are self-sabotaging. Are you stressed out and looking for a way to self-soothe? Are you actually scared of the changes in lifestyle required and have a fear of losing a part of yourself? Are you scared of failing, or opposite to that, are you actually scared of the responsibilities and the perceptions that will change if you get to a place of success? Are you worried about what that's going to look like, how you're going to sustain it, what other people are going to think of you even? Are you bored with the routine and the habits that you're trying to put in place? Maybe there's a lack of planning, a lack of structure and organization. All of these things and more can cause you to come off track and derail your progress. We want to reflect on the patterns and we want to pinpoint a source. And a really easy way to do this is by journaling, either some journal prompts, or when you find yourself in that mode where you're starting to self-sabotage, is actually looking at what's going on and figuring out, is there an emotional need that's unmet? Is there a lack of organization here? Is there a structure that can change, or is something else going on? And that can be as simple as identifying, what are you doing? What's happening right now? Are you trying to soothe or solve something? Or is there something else your brain is trying to fix with this sabotaging habit? If you're doing this in your phone notes, it will make it really easy because you can just start a list, just like a running list with like the date and what happened. And then what you can start to do is look for like repeating and regular triggers. Like for instance, if you find yourself skipping workouts a lot, pay attention. Is it after a busy day at work? The research does show that just even by identifying and like analyzing these triggers can create a huge amount of change. It's just by starting to pay attention and developing that awareness. Once we have developed that awareness, that's when we can start to troubleshoot and find things that help it. So for instance, if you're someone who tends to pick up a takeaway or order Uber Eats after a busy day at work because you're tired and you're stressed, instead, is there something that you can do to soothe that emotional need or mitigate that stress or help your nervous system calm down before you get to the point of choosing what you're going to eat? Even if you meal prep and all that sort of thing, it doesn't matter, because you might meal prep and then be like, but this option sounds so much better right now, because we actually haven't addressed the root cause. Yes, the meal prep will be the organizational side of things, but it doesn't actually fix the emotional trigger that's going on. So start paying attention to patterns.
Change how you see failure. Failure is not the end. Failure is feedback. This is one of the most important mindset shifts you can make. And an example of another client is a client, Emma. She used to like training, but she couldn't get super consistent with it. And what she would find is she would train really, really hard for a few weeks, and then something would pop up and she would fall off track. And she would always say to herself, like, oh, I'm just not someone who can be consistent with my training. And what would happen is like she'd fall off partway through a week, and then it would take her a week or 2 weeks, or, you know, sometimes even longer to recover from that and get back in the groove of training consistently. So we had to reframe her perspective. What she was finding was going on in her head was saying, I failed, I suck at this, like, again, I've shown myself I can't do this. And it was that really negative dialogue. And when we started to shift it and go, okay, what happened for that routine to fall out of place, we were able to see a lot of patterns and a lot of things that were going on. Each time you fall off track, or I'm going to say like fail at something, or don't follow through on what you set for yourself, we need to see like, okay, what caused that to happen and how do I bounce back faster next time? Because implementing and changing all these habits isn't like a light switch. It's not like on or off. It's more like a dimmer. Like over time, we're going to see it change. Like if you're someone who deals with emotional eating, you don't just suddenly stop overnight. It's very, very unusual that that would happen. What we would see is the frequency becomes less and less and less and less until it's not a thing anymore. Use the data to tell you what is not working so that you can keep moving forward. And if you're not able to keep track of all these things on your own, this is where having a coach really comes in handy, because we're here to troubleshoot for you. Use the anti-procrastination timer or the 10-minute rule. Just starting is sometimes enough to finish. If you're having a hard day starting your workout, starting your cardio, tell yourself, I'll just do 10 minutes, and oftentimes you will finish it. Something as simple as the 10-minute rule can minimize overwhelm and just create momentum for you. Now let's talk about how you speak to yourself. I feel like there's so much advice online that's like, you know, you have to speak positively and you have to love yourself first and blah, blah, blah. Tend to have really negative dialogue, and you use the guilt and the shame and the almost like whip cracking to get yourself to do the things that you didn't want to do. So for someone who has had that type of dialogue running in their head constantly, it's going to be really hard to just be like, love yourself and think positive. Like it's too far away. So what I would recommend aiming for is neutral self-talk. Let's say you've planned out your meals for the week, you know what you want to be eating, you've got a goal of fat loss, and then you go and you stress eat, or you have something that is like super indulgent. And maybe your natural dialogue is just tell yourself like, I'm terrible, of course I did this again, I can't stick to anything. What we want to try and do is just replace that dialogue. Instead of something positive, just neutral. I ate this and I can make a different choice next time. So much easier, so much less pressure without it feeling forced and like fake positivity. Neutral self-talk is going to also allow you to step out of that spiral of guilt, sit down, take stock of things from almost like a third-party perspective. I want you to sit outside of yourself and just observe it, and no judgment. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. Remember, this whole thing is about progress. It's not about perfection. It's about refining as we go, making little changes over time, and beating yourself up for a choice you have already made is just going to make that spiral worse.
Now, you can do this in whatever way feels best to you, but I think it's really important to have some way to visualize, map out, have some sense of direction of which way you're going to go. Now, for some people, a really great way to do this is to make like a vision board. I love setting a word for the year. That's been my go-to for the last few years. So every single year I'll set like a main theme word, and then, you know, I try to make sure my goals align with that for like the long-term outcome. And that way, when I'm making little decisions, when I'm moving through my weeks and my months, because it's all these little decisions are going to add up to what that end outcome is, I can go, okay, well, does this align with what I wanted for this year? Yes or no? So this year, on top of setting the word for the year, which I do cover in that workshop that I mentioned that's linked in the description box, I also decided to go through and create a little vision board because my friend Rachel was here and we were like, let's make a little activity out of it. And instead of turning it into just like a big board to stick on the wall, what we did is we built them into notebooks because Rachel travels around a lot and she needs something like small and compact that she can take with her. And for me, I don't like having a big bulky item like that on my walls. And I sometimes feel quite private with my goals because I like to be able to write a lot of things alongside them, like little milestones that I want to hit and things like that. So I decided to put mine in a notebook as well, and it's one that I keep on my desk or on the shelf near my desk so that it's really easily accessible. So basically we just went on Pinterest, and for our vision boards we tried to do them with different themes. So I did one for personal style, I did one for home, I did one for business, I did one for mindset, and we just used the collage tool on there to sort of piece it together. And then we went and printed them out and started to stick them in the notebooks, and it was actually such a fun little activity to do together, especially while we were sitting there and building them together, because we could see what felt important to each other as well, and that just creates an extra layer of accountability.
Now also, life happens, travel, illness, disruptions, busy schedules, so plan for these, make contingencies for times like this. For instance, I'm traveling to the US and I was like, okay, when I get there, what sort of things do I want to eat? I know where I'm going to be staying, I know I can get some groceries, I might also order some meals. So I looked at a few different meal prep companies to decide like, okay, what are some things that I want to have backed up in the fridge so I'm not constantly doing cooking and things like that while I'm there. And yes, I will have meals out, but I know how to set up my plate for that. So you can do this in your head or start a phone notes, but this is something I like to do with clients as well, where, you know, if they had a particularly tricky week where they had a lot of things going on or they feel they weren't able to maintain their habits and their momentum, I say to them, okay, well, if you were in that situation again in a few weeks' time, what's one or two things that you would do to tackle that situation differently? Whether you have to write it out or whether you can just think about it and remember the answer, I think it's really, really important to have that contingency in place. So next time you're faced with that same situation, you know what you would choose to do it differently. If you're really struggling to recognize the progress that you're making, I would recommend looking and observing and taking note of your micro wins to build momentum. Every step forward, no matter how small it is, reinforces your confidence and your ability to make these decisions to change your life and your habits, your routines, and your rituals. So what you can do is at the end of each day, write down one thing or three things that you're really proud of yourself for doing. Similar to how people do a gratitude list, but it's more like reflecting on your day and being like, oh, you know what? Like I drank all my water by the time that I wanted to, or I ate my meal prep for lunch instead of going out and buying something. Little wins like this and recognizing them. And what that's going to do is actually going to train your brain to look for more wins through the day or to look for opportunities to give you more of those little wins that are focused in the direction that you want. So pay attention to them. Set a little reminder in your phone to sit and jot them out each day, even if it's just like a big running note in your phone. It doesn't doesn't matter. We want to pay attention to them, especially if you're someone who is struggling to build that momentum, and if you're someone who struggles to recognize when you're doing well. If you tend to be more negatively geared and you look at all the things that you did wrong instead of what you did right, start this activity. Now, if you are in a sticky situation, I know this is easier said than done, but a pre-action pause is really helpful. So even just something as simple as asking yourself, is this going to get me closer to or further away from my goal? We need to know, when are we making a decision because it's making life more enjoyable, or when are we making a decision because we're trying to reward or punish ourselves with that action? Just taking a little moment for that mindfulness can really redirect the decision that you're about to make for something that is more in line with your long-term goal for yourself. And now I want you to audit your environment. This heavily influences your behavior. I know sometimes we can't fully control what's in our environment, whether it's work, family, that sort of thing, but we can do our best to set ourselves up a little supportive bubble. Surround yourself with people, tools, reminders, and supports that will help move you towards your goal. And this can look like curating your social media to get rid of anyone who makes you feel bad about yourself. It can be getting rid of the snacks and things that aren't so nutrient dense, like keeping them out of sight so they're not the first thing that you see. We have other options popping up first. It can be spending more time with the friends that are supportive and understanding of your goals. There's so many things that we can do, but obviously a lot of that is going to be unique to your lifestyle and your work, family, all of that. But overall, these 10 tips are about building momentum and setting up the habits in a way that works. Self-sabotage doesn't define you. It's not something that you're always stuck with. You do have the power to change that. If you are ready to shake things up, if you want to take it to the next level, if you'd like to work with me directly to do that, I do have my one-on-one coaching program where you would be working with me directly. So I'll leave a link to that in the description box. If you've made it all the way through to the end, thank you so much for watching all the way through. I really appreciate you being here, and I'll catch you in my next video.